The best thing about writing a blog is that nobody tells me what to do. She spent the last 6 months of her life affirming the value of life. That blew me away.
Today's guest is a former pro-life lobbyist in Concord, New Hampshire, and now she writes on pro-life subjects. Please welcome to the show, Ellen Kolb.
Hi, I'm so glad you had me here. It's good to see you.
Hi, Ellen. Welcome to the Ever Living podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. So how did you come to New Hampshire? What's your story?
I've been in New Hampshire for a little over 40 years. I moved up as a young mom and had been doing a little bit of pro-life work with my church when I was in college down in Florida. And when I moved up here, it was a providential thing that got me into pro-life work. I happened to go to a rally, and I was wearing what at the time there were pro-life bracelets, like POW bracelets, like polished stainless steel on my wrist. And I'm holding my baby. The light flashed off that, and I didn't know it, and it caught the attention of a gentleman named Russ Pond, who headed up the New Hampshire Pro-Life Council at the time. He walked over to me, introduced himself, and said, "You're new here." I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Well, you want to be involved in pro-life? Have I got a group for you?" And that was the beginning of several decades of meeting wonderful people and who do wonderful things all over the state. I never would have met him if the light hadn't shown off of that bracelet. But that's how I got started.
Do you still have that bracelet?
I do not. I gave it to one of my kids to teethe on, and it disappeared. And it's like God had that in my life for that purpose. And when it was done, we didn't need it anymore.
It was like a beacon flash.
Yeah. I look back and I think it's amazing how it all got started with that. But someone took the trouble to reach out and say, "Hey, might you be interested?" And really, isn't that how so many of us get involved in doing pro-life work? Is someone takes the time to go, "Hey, you might be interested in this."
Yeah. Word of mouth. Mm-hmm. Very organic.
And what?
No. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just saying 1-to-1.
Oh, 1-to-1, yeah. So what did you start out doing?
I'm a writer. I've always been interested in writing. And even when I was rearing my kids, I did whatever I could that involved writing. And for the Pro-Life Council, that meant writing up their newsletter. When I became part of the board of New Hampshire-Right-to-Life later, I worked on the newspaper that they put out several times a year, their newsletter. It was really quite a production, a multi-page information piece that went out several times a year. And later when I went to Concord and became a lobbyist, Cornerstone was one of my clients, and I worked with them on legislative research and writing for like white papers and also preparing testimony. So writing has been my way of engaging in the pro-life movement. And in the course of that, it has taken me all over the state to meet people doing many kinds of ministries. I've gotten a lot more than I've given. I really believe that.
So, wow. So who are some of the people you've met around New Hampshire?
I went up to, when I interview people at the pregnancy care centers, they amaze me. I'm thinking of Angel who was up at the Pregnancy Care Center in Littleton, Evelyn, who is the executive director of the Pregnancy Care Center out in Keene right now, Michael, who is the executive director in Dover. Each center is very much concerned with its own community, even though they have a common mission, even though they cooperate, each knows what the other one's doing. They're highly responsive to what's needed in their own communities, and to hear their stories about how they themselves got involved. Sometimes these are people who never thought they'd be heading up a nonprofit, never mind a pro-life nonprofit. But in the course of their work in pastoral work, in corporate management, in community volunteering, it draws them in because those skills are all needed to do the things that keep a pregnancy care center going on. And everybody's got a different story. It's amazing. Wherever I go, I know I'm going to learn something new.
Mm-hmm. And what have you learned about writing over the years?
The best thing about writing a blog is that nobody tells me what to do, and the worst thing about writing a blog is that nobody tells me what to do. It really benefits if I'm trying to get a message out to people. A second set of eyes, or someone whose judgment I trust, running things by them can really make for a sharper, more focused thing. But you don't want to get so nervous that you don't write at all.
Yeah.
When you see, when you observe, especially if you're in a place that other people aren't, like in a hearing room, don't count on anybody else to get the story out. There's plenty of credentialed news media around the state. That's not always where you're going to find what's happening. That's not always where you're going to get the texture of what's happening. If you want to know what's going on, and you know you can write, you know you can do video, you know you have some way of using media, use it. Use it, because people need to know within the pro-life movement that there is reliable reporting going on about what's happening.
Do you remember any stories over the years that were very memorable?
Oh gosh, lots. And I'll mention, I should probably build up to this, but I'm going to mention it first because it meant so much. New Hampshire has something called a fetal homicide law. That gives prosecutors the option, not the mandate, to bring a homicide charge if someone kills a pregnant woman and in the process kills her child that she's carrying against her will. If the death is against the mother's will, past 20 weeks, the prosecutor has the option of bringing a homicide charge. And this came up because of a ghastly car wreck in Manchester caused by a drunk driver. And among the victims was a taxi driver who was injured. She was pregnant. Her child was delivered surgically as she was being treated for her injuries, and the baby died 2 weeks later of what the medical examiner determined was injuries sustained in the collision.
Oh.
All kinds of convictions, including for the death of that child. The convicted man appealed everything, and the Supreme Court had to throw out the conviction for the death of the child because New Hampshire law did not allow that. The child was not a person under the law. And the justice said, it was a unanimous New Hampshire Supreme Court, but he said, if the legislature finds this result as unfortunate as we do, they will get to work revisiting our homicide laws where the fetus is concerned. It took years. The court said that in 2009, and I think it was 2017, when New Hampshire finally got a fetal homicide law, and it came not from pro-lifers who we'd been saying for years, we need this, we need this. It came from two families who had lost children, both of them as a result of traffic collisions, who cared enough, who brought their own stories, the photos of their children with the little bruises on their cheeks. Those stories really had impact. And to see the way these people who, some of them were not used to dealing with legislators, they would just come back again and again and tell their story. That did it. That's pro-life work. It takes time. It takes unconventional coalitions. And sometimes a victory will come where you least expect it.
And did that law, was there a story this year that?
For the first time, a conviction was obtained under that law. A man in Ossipee is, I think he was just sentenced for the death of the woman and the child she was carrying. No prosecutor is forced to use the law, but it's there. And particularly when the death occurs because of callous disregard, or worse yet, for malice, there needs to be accounting for that. And now prosecutors have that tool.
Do you think it can apply to abortion pills being secretly fed to mothers?
If a bad actor causes the death of a preborn child against the will of the mother, then I think that yes, it can be used. In New Hampshire, it's the law applies only to pregnancies 20 weeks or later. And if the abortion pill is administered early, as you know, resulting in the death of the child, that would not be covered under New Hampshire's law. But normally, as long as the baby is more than 20 weeks along, if a bad actor's action causes the death of that child against the will of the mother, the law is on the books.
Mm-hmm. And do you ever think of like writing books or
The one book that I have published is an anthology of essays from the pro-life blog I had for many years called Lovin' for the Loaf. And when I started pulling it together, I thought, well, I'll just take the 10 most popular stories over the last 12 years. And I thought, no, when I looked over them, it wasn't the most popular stories. It was the people. They were the most compelling ones. The woman I met, Maggie, who was dying of a brain tumor, but I heard from her one September day, and it was earlier that year. She'd been diagnosed with glioblastoma, and she had been offered the chance to, do you want to be helped to die? She said, well, no. She spent the last 6 months of her life affirming the value of life. That blew me away. And just saying, you don't have to reach for assisted suicide. This is a really stinking situation, but there's so much to live for. The families I just talked about with the fetal homicide law, they were amazing. Catherine, a woman I met who had worked for Planned Parenthood down on Comm Ave in Boston, who one day was asked to clean up after a second trimester abortion, and she stopped and she said, this is not what I came here for. I came here for women's health. But at least I'm not like those crazy pro-lifers outside. That was the beginning. That was the beginning of a long spiritual journey for her. But, this is a woman who went in to help others. She thought she was working on health. She saw what was left after an abortion, and she went, this is not what I was talking about. What amazing people brave enough to tell their stories and share them in a community where such stories are not always welcomed. But they inspire me every single day.
And what is that anthology called?
It's called Pro-Life Journeys. It's available on Amazon, and also from me directly. If anybody messages me through Substack, I can get that to them. But it's just a collection, because everywhere I go, there are people doing amazing things. I think of a woman, Darlene. Some of you may know Darlene Pollock, who's been outspoken about human trafficking. I had worked with her off and on for years in pro-life stuff, and then she spoke up about how she had been trafficked as a young woman. I had no idea. And Darlene said in one interview I did with her, she said, people said to me, look, you can't go public with this. And she said, no more secrets. And that just, that's bravery. That is real bravery. Yep, that's the Amazon page for it.
Wow, very affordable.
It is.
Everybody wants it.
If
$2 on
you've
Kindle.
got a Kindle, there it is. It is just short stories from 12 years worth of reporting from the State House. And, it covers the death penalty. People who have come out against the death penalty when they didn't expect they would. People who've come out against assisted suicide when they never thought they would. Abortion, human trafficking, all kinds of aspects. Each one has a face and a story. And those stories deserve to be told.
Yeah. And like valuing life, it affects all people, like whether like the disability community, whether it's like the elderly, and like
the most amazing coalition right now is the coalition that's formed against assisted suicide. That has come up in New Hampshire again and again and again. And the reason it has been lost every time is because people from the conventional pro-life community stand up with people from the disability rights community who know that assisted suicide discriminates against anyone with a disability. And when someone who's concerned about that comes to a hearing, I'm not going to get up and talk. I was up there for many years, and people on the Judiciary Committee could look at me and say, okay, we know what you're going to say. Say, fine, listen to this person over here. You haven't heard from her before. She's got something to say. It's the coalition, the broad variety of people. And you might think, oh, I don't want to work with someone who doesn't agree with me here and there. No, for assisted suicide, you stand with everyone who is concerned about it, no matter where they're coming from. That is what has kept assisted suicide from advancing so far.
Yeah. And what kind of writing writing projects are you working on now?
The short form that I do on Substack, which I call Braided Trails, is my main thing right now. I
Mm-hmm.
have, for years, I have had many blogs. I had my pro-life blog. I had a I had a political blog, and I had hiking because I love to go out hiking. And after a while, it was like, you know what? I need a place where I can put all of it, braid them together, three threads braided together. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
when I went to Substack. So when I send out a newsletter twice a month, it's going to have, if something's happening in Concord, I'm going to put a light on that. If I've done an interview that I want to share with people, that's going to be there. And if I've been someplace really amazing in New Hampshire where I've gone hiking, I'll put up something about that. But life in New Hampshire is way too rich to stay in one lane.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite hikes in New Hampshire?
I am a huge fan of New Hampshire's rail trails because they are all over the state. You don't need to have the aerobic fitness of an Everest climber to do it, and they're everywhere. There's some the southern, the central, and the northern parts of the state. They're beautiful, and they have history. Each one has got not just rail history, but many of the towns where it goes through, they'll have signs saying this is the sort of thing that happened in this place. And there's some fun ones, like in Salem, there's the local Dunkin' Donuts has put up a sign by the trail saying, hop off right here, we've got coffee for you. But the rail trails are my real loves when it comes to hiking in New Hampshire. There are 300 miles of them, and you won't see the same thing twice on any one. Just enjoy it.
Well, Jason has
Hello.
joined the pod.
Hey,
Hi
Ellen.
there. How you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to be here. I was just talking about how I cannot write about a single thing. I've got to pull in all kinds of stuff. Being non-focused is my biggest bane and advantage as a writer. But the work that I've done with pro-life, I was telling Xindi, it's the stories of what other people have done, the people who have come from working in abortion facilities and are now pro-life, the people who've come from corporate management and are now working with pro-life pregnancy care centers. Fascinating. Everybody's got a story, and they deserve to be heard.
Yeah.
So tell me, so sorry, I'm coming in late. I'm actually coming from a pro-life meeting in Maine. But what are some of the stories that have moved you the most where you've interacted with people?
What moved me the most was meeting, not just reading about, but meeting Catherine, who had formerly worked at Planned Parenthood in Boston, and her journey out was not conventional. As I mentioned before, one day she was asked to clean up after a second trimester abortion, and she looked and she said, "This is not what I'm here for. I came for women's health. This is not what I'm here for." And she said, "At least I'm not one of those crazy pro-lifers outside," because there were people praying outside her clinic all the time. And she said that gave us a great sense of solidarity inside. We were standing together against the crazies. Well, it was gradual. She walked out of the facility that day, and that was the beginning of a long process that led to conversion of heart. And she is now among the most passionate defenders of human life. And it wasn't sudden. That's what I'm learning. None of this is sudden. There might be one event, but getting to where, yeah, I want to go public, I want to talk about this, takes time. Mm-hmm. And so I want people to learn to tell their stories. Because as you know, Jason, you've spent a lot of time in Concord. By the time a hearing comes up on a bill, 80% of the work's already been done, and you don't know it. You come to the hearing, which is important. You sign in, which is important. But you look up there and you already know how the vote's going to go. You know who's doing what. The difference comes earlier, one-on-one conversations in the hallway, conversations in your local town with your reps. When they hear your story and they look at you, and it's not an issue, it's a person, it's a story, that's where hearts are going to be changed. Mm-hmm. I wish more hearts would be changed in hearings, because I'm a political animal. I'd love to go to Concord and just push the right buttons and have everything go that way. But no, it starts way before the hearing starts. one-on-one conversations.
Do you ever have any pushback or comments on your writing, or have you encountered
I got a lot
that?
more pushback when I was more politically active. The comments now are, there's something very raw about being in the moment in a political debate, and people are hurting, and people will say things that 5 or 10 minutes contemplation would have them put a different way. So when I'm writing now and I'm bringing together all the things of the hiking and the life issues, it's not so much pushback, but in the political environment, yeah, there is. And it's very hard not to come back with the hot take. I mean, I pride myself on being able to snap back at anybody who snaps at me. That's really nothing to be proud of when you're up at the State House, I'm sorry to say. That's when it's hardest, because people are at their rawest and most vulnerable when they've got an investment in getting a bill passed or stopped. So learning how to respond accurately or appropriately and listen appropriately, it's a long lifetime process. I can tell you I've been working at it 40 years and I'm still not an expert at it.
Is it James 1? It's where he says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger.
Mm-hmm. And there are things that I need to read over and over again because it just doesn't sink in. We all have our temperaments. We bring those gifts when we come together and do ministries, and those same temperaments can be a challenge to ourselves and to the people we work with. And I have to keep that in mind.
What do you see or hope for the future of politics in New Hampshire?
I would love to see the parties have their place. And I have worked, in full disclosure, back in 2010, 2012, I worked for the State Republican Committee on campaigns statewide. I would love to have it where the parties, both of them, are absolutely stunned at the turnout on a life issue bill by people who don't give a hoot what your party is. They don't care. And I want no party to take the pro-life vote for granted. I don't want anyone saying to me, well, I'm running against someone who you know is pro-abortion, so you've got to vote for me. Excuse me. No, I don't. I want politicians not to take pro-life work for granted, and I want New Hampshire residents to be unafraid to tell their stories when it's relevant to a policy that's being advanced or fought. I would really like to see the parties dialed back and the individuals dialed up.
So Ellen, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to tell their story, but maybe they're intimidated? Maybe they think there's too many rough edges.
Time.
People would think less of me if I said that. What would your advice to them be?
I would say that you probably don't want the first time you talk about it to be in front of a hearing room. I would seriously say it needs to be with someone you trust or in a small group, someone you can be vulnerable with and tell the story. You say it with a small group, one person probably, then a small group. And then if you would like to get to the point where you speak about it in a public forum in order to persuade, I'm serious, run it by people. Practice it. Because believe me, lobbyists practice what they say. There's a lot of theater up there that you wouldn't realize until you've been in the State House for a while. Don't be forced into telling your story before you're ready, but be ready. And always be ready to support somebody. When somebody comes forth, the woman Catherine I spoke about, the first time she went public, she said her knees were knocking. She was afraid the pro-lifers would shut her out. And in fact, the first time she spoke was when she came to New Hampshire, when one of our executive counselors was getting a hard time for voting against a Planned Parenthood contract. She came up to tell the truth about Planned Parenthood, and she wasn't sure how we'd take it. Can you imagine that? She saw pro-lifers as scary things, not people. You got to build the relationships. So when you have a story to tell, you start small, you start close, you build trust, then you'll be ready. You'll be ready in January when the stuff starts piling up on the hearing tables.
Mm-hmm.
So one other question, I guess, as I meet people who have really like raw stories, very tough stories that they want to tell, but I'm not always sure, have they received healing for that? Mm-hmm. or like, because we're dealing with issues like abortion. Yep. And a lot of women especially have pain and suffering when thinking about like what happened. Mm-hmm. How do you have any ideas on like how's a gauge to say for somebody who's thinking of telling their story, like to say, okay, I've had enough healing to be able to now speak this in a more public setting?
I would start by speaking to whatever public figures are involved. Perhaps it's a rep on a committee, perhaps it's someone on a local board. Talk to that person privately, one-on-one, or in a small group. The first time you tell your story does not have to be with TV cameras and mics. The story needs to be with someone who's, you need to get them used to the fact that there is a story to be heard. But let it be one-on-one. Let the relationship build. And then who knows, you might have an ally when the full hearing comes. There might be somebody standing by you who wasn't standing by before. And I think that we need to be very conscious within the pro-life community of people who might feel judged, who might feel, who might have made a choice in the past that was not life-affirming, and they've had a conversion of heart. Be open, be welcome, because rightly or wrongly, as I said, when Catherine said, I didn't know what you guys were going to think of me. It's like, are you kidding me? You just put yourself right out there. What's there to do? But thank you. Just be willing to encourage someone you know has a story to tell, and sometimes that encouragement will mean helping them find healing. You don't just. If I were to stick a microphone in front of someone in the midst of their pain, that would be theater. It wouldn't be pro-life. It wouldn't be affirming the person. It wouldn't be affirming the truth. It would be trying to score points. And that's not what we're here for.
Yeah. Well, we're almost at the end of today's episode. So, Ellen, if you have a Bible verse you'd like to share with our listeners, that'd be great.
When John the Baptist was brought in for presentation, his father, who had been mute ever since he doubted that the baby was coming, the father got his voice back and praised God. And at the end he said, in the tender compassion of our God, the dawn from on high shall break upon us to shine on those who dwell in darkness and the shadow of death, and to guide our feet into the way of peace. I think that's a promise. That's a promise I bring with me every day.
That's so good.
Yeah. And I think that's what we are doing as pro-lifers, is we're trying to bring peace for everybody, to recognize peace and life and encouragement. And wow, thank you, Ellen. You're always so encouraging whenever I see you and get to talk to you. And
I look forward to working with you again. I look forward to meeting more people around the state, and let's keep the work going.
Amen.
All right, everybody. That is Ellen Kolb, a pro-life writer. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Ever Living podcast, a podcast by New Hampshire Right-to-Life, New Hampshire's oldest and most active pro-life organization. You can learn more about our work and learn how to get involved at www.nhrtl.org. If you would like to donate to our mission, you can make a donation at www.nhrtl.org/donate. See you next week. May God bless you and be very near to you, and may you be ever living.